Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. Do you want to become a better shooter, reduce flinch, protect your ears, and just overall enjoy shooting your gun that much more? Then there's no better way to do that than by adding a suppressor to the end of your barrel. Be sure to check out Huxwrx Safety Co, as they are a leader in the suppressor world with their OSS Flow-Through Technology, virtually eliminating blowback and toxic gas that can affect weapon system performance and shooter health. To find out more about Huxwrx, go to huxwrx.com. That's huxwrx.com, and go get yourself a suppressor for your upcoming hunts. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by OnX Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is OnX Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, OnX Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust OnX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about OnX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt. and check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. All right, guys, if you're in the market for optics, I want you to go check out blackdiamondoptics.com. Black Diamond Optics offers world-class sporting and tactical optics, including thermals, all at wholesale pricing, direct to consumer. They are going to be partnering up with us for 2023, and I want to start pointing you over towards their direction. Check out Black Diamond Optics. If you've got any questions about it, shoot us a message. Love to hear from you. Be blessed, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and tonight I am joined by an absolute gem within the hunting world. Somebody who I ran into at the Dallas Safari Club, made a super awkward introduction, and then was like, I want to get to know this person more. And as I started to hear some stories and her take on the hunting world and just life in general, and then I pursued her social media, and I was like, this person is fascinating. And so without further ado, I got the brand marketing manager from Nosler, Madi Woodward, here to record live in Soul Seeker Studio to talk all about her origin story and what it's like to be the human that she is in the world that we're living in, because we're living in wild times right now, such as spring bear just got canceled in the state of Washington, and I feel like Oregon's not that far behind with everything that's going on. So without further ado, Madi, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me on here. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. One of the biggest things that really stood out to me is when we were talking at the Western Hunt Expo, and you're standing in the booth just being kind and sweet, and I knew who you were at this time because the first go around I was like, okay, you are you Madi? And so now I'm coming to the booth. I'm like, hey, Madi, remember me from Dallas? I was the really awkward guy that came up to you and all this. And then we were chatting, and then you said, yeah, everyone typically will wait to talk to the guys in the booth and not necessarily chat with me, thinking that I don't know what I'm talking about or whatever. I thought that was really fascinating. And from there, it really sparked my interest into, what it's like to be a woman in the hunting world, what it's like just from your perspective. Everyone has opinions in this life. Very few people have perspectives, because perspectives come with experiences, and you have quite a few of them. So, Madi, what's your history? Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and we'll go from there.
So I live in Central Oregon. I actually grew up in Northwest Oregon. I'm going to say Northwest Oregon because I don't want it to be confused with Portland. So I grew up about 45 minutes west of Portland, in a small little town. And I have been hunting from very little. I have pictures of me and my dad in camo, and I have like my little camo bucket hat on, little yellow binos that I probably couldn't even see through. But my dad's the one that initially got me started in hunting, and I have a younger brother, and him and I grew up hunting together too. So it's kind of always been in my blood. And now I live in Central Oregon and work for Nosler, and it's really just right up the alley and has become a huge, huge passion of mine.
Yeah. I can tell just by the way you carry yourself. One of the things that I find truly fascinating, because I'm a father of 3 little boys, 8, 6, and gonna be 4 this July. And I didn't get into hunting until really my first was born. Like I took my hunter safety uh, when I was 30 years old. And so I took it. I wanted to learn how to hunt. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I want my children to learn how to hunt, and I'm going to be
Yeah,
able to bless them with that opportunity. And I actually got to take my oldest boy out, and he shot his first deer this last October, which was like
that's so
blew,
exciting.
blew me away. Not only did he make a great shot, however, the whole eating the deer that he provided for the family, like we're sitting down and
Mhm.
being like, here I am on my hunting journey of like, oh man, I'm a hunter now, and look at this food I'm providing. Hear me be all manly, and getting to eat my little boy's deer. And I'm like, Carter, you did such an amazing job. Thank you. Like, do you realize
That's so rewarding.
you're feeding the family right now? I was just really shocked. So hearing you talk about you grew up hunting with your father, like, so you're the oldest child.
Yes, I'm the oldest. My brother is 17 months younger, so like super close in age, and we were always close growing up. But yeah, I can't remember like even ever getting started in hunting because I was just doing it that young with my dad. And it's funny because to this day, my mom has never killed anything, but she's always so supportive. Like she would get up early, pack our lunches, like make sure we had all the warm jackets, the gloves, everything we needed. But yeah, I it's just ingrained in me. I've not really ever known any different.
Oh man. It's so amazing to hear when people say, I just kind of grew up doing it. I do it because I do it. And what would life be like if you didn't hunt? What
Oh,
would you fill your time up with?
I have no idea. So, well, actually, I do. I grew up showing horses. I love horses. I still have horses, and that's another huge passion of mine. I'm also big into like health and fitness. I grew up playing sports. I played college basketball. So those are probably would take up a lot of my time if I didn't
There
have
you go.
hunting.
So
I would still definitely be involved in the outdoors for sure because I just love it. But
yeah.
yeah.
How's your jump shot?
I played post, so didn't have too much of a jump shot, but if you get me anywhere down low within a few feet of the key, I do good.
You tear it up just
Yeah.
posting on people. I
Yeah.
love it. I coached girls basketball for like 8 years, and it was so much fun. I coached high school football, middle school boys basketball, middle school girls basketball, and then I did track. And
Yeah.
it was so much fun switching gears from boys basketball to girls basketball. I was like, man, you guys are so sweet. Just awesome.
I
And
was gonna say it wasn't fun because I don't know, I just cannot stand watching girls basketball. Like, I hate to say that, but
no,
it was really fun playing it.
it was a lot of fun watching it because for the first time, like being a coach of boys basketball and girls basketball, I'm constantly fighting with the boys to be like, okay, this is what we're going to be doing. And
Mhm.
when it came to my girls teams, it was like, all right, ladies, this is what we're doing. They're like, yes, let's do it.
Okay,
Like they were so to a T of like, no, when I said set a screen here, they were on that exact spot.
yeah, yeah.
I loved it. And it was just so beautiful seeing the dynamics of people interacting and growing up, and it's so powerful. And so so you're a college athlete.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Where'd you play at?
I played at Willamette University. It was a D3 school in Oregon.
I love it. So I played college football. I was a quarterback.
Okay.
Yeah. So I
Dang.
did that and lacrosse at Central Washington. So
Oh, sweet.
D2 school, but I think when I played lacrosse at Central, we came down and I think we played Willamette. In the early
Oh,
days of
yep. They did
lacrosse.
have a lacrosse team.
Yeah. So that's wild. Well, take us through your journey. Like you grew up just where you're like, Dad, take me with you, or was it, hey, Maddie, you're coming with me type thing?
I honestly don't remember when it first started out, but I know as I got older, I look back and I see so many different mindset like changes that I had growing up and through my hunting journey. So I can remember being really little, and I always wanted to go with my dad. And I don't really even remember asking or him asking if I wanted to go. He just like he took us, and but I really enjoyed that time with him. And I remember probably I don't know, it was probably like fifth or sixth grade, and I didn't have a tag at that point. I was just like tagging along with my dad. And I remember he is the type of hunter, like hunting all public land in the coast range. So it's really thick, really steep stuff. We're sitting in glass and clear cuts for hours on end. But my dad was a type where he would just walk and he would like track animals and he'd just walk through the woods, dead silent. And I remember being like, I hate walking. We would walk all the time, and I'm like, I hate this. And but I remember like I never wanted to disappoint him or for him to think like, oh, she doesn't want to be out here with me. So I always went with him no matter what. And I'd always get out of the truck. And then I went through a phase of like,
What's up, Soul Seekers Nation? Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really appreciate it. As a reward, I have some discount codes for you to use if you are in the market for a brand new hunting pack. Go check out initialascent.com and Initial Ascent packs. They are made in America. Their one-piece carbon frame is an absolute game changer. We run their packs. We love them. And you can save 5% at checkout by using the code SOULSEEKERS. That's all one word. Also, for those of you who are archery hunters and you are tired of shooting at dots on a target, check out deadnutsoutdoors.com for their lifelike 2D archery targets. You can save 20% on all of their products by using the code SOULSEEKERS at checkout. Once again, the code is SOULSEEKERS, all one word. Go check out initialascent.com and Dead Nuts Outdoors. Enjoy the podcast.
I had my first kill, and I really kind of like that struck my real interest in hunting. And then I went through, playing college basketball and getting into fitness and lifting. Then I kind of looked at hunting as a way to pursue fitness in the field. And now I'm really about like field to table, hunting as conservation, and kind of just it's like therapy. So like I look back and I see all of these different changes and different reasons why I did it at different points in my life. But I'm really glad that I ended up here with like my current perspective on hunting.
I want you to expand more on this because this is truly fascinating. And a lot of people I don't think pause in life enough to actually reflect. On this podcast, we always say that inward reflection leads to outward correction. You want to make corrections and transform in your life and make changes for the better, then you got to actually think on your ways, right?
Yeah.
So thinking about this journey, you started off. Well, how old were you when you shot your first animal, or got your?
I was 15 when I shot my first buck, and I had done hunter safety when I was younger and stuff. But then I drew a youth tag when I was 15 and shot my first buck.
And so when that experience happened, like take us through the story. You're what? Just driving and see a buck in a clear cut. You're hiking and you jump one, and then what type of shot was it, and what type of processes were going through your mind at this time?
Oh my gosh, I have a lot happened prior to me killing my first buck. I had hunted elk with my dad in the Coast Range a lot, and I don't know if they have it in other states, but in Oregon, you are guaranteed a draw if you're a youth elk hunter. So you're like guaranteed an elk tag. And usually you start out with a cow elk or whatever. And so it was my first year, and don't ask me why, but my dad put me in for this unit called Saddle Mountain in Oregon, which is known for like trophy Roosevelt bulls. And so, which is sweet. I'm like, I get to go hunt trophy bulls. So we were up hunting in the Coast Range, and I remember one of the days, like I was talking to about like how I didn't want to get out of the truck and walk, but I didn't want to disappoint my dad. So we pulled up along this clear cut, and it was like kind of this deep bowl, and there was some small reprod through it, and then it butted up against some thick timber, and there was an old skid road that went down through this bowl and into the timber. And it was probably from the road that we were sitting on in the truck, it was probably a good 650 yards or so to the big timber tree line. But from where we were parked, you couldn't see down into the bottom of this bowl. And so my dad's like, I'm going to get out and go jump over this edge and glass this bowl. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stay in the truck. and then he comes back and gets me, and he's like, hey, let's just walk down here, which is such a typical thing for my dad to say. It's always like, hey, let's just like walk over the edge. And, pretty soon it's like, okay, well, let's go a little further and then a little further. And then we're out there the entire day.
Yeah.
So I get out of the truck and we drop over this edge, and we're kind of just sitting and glassing this clear cut. And pretty soon we see a few cow elk over. They're probably 500 yards away, and they're popping out of the timber onto this skid road. And then pretty soon we see a few more down in the reprod that are coming up onto the skid road. And so we're watching them and seeing if there's any bulls with them. And I look down, and in the bottom of this bowl of reprod, I'm like, hey, Dad, what's that down there? And he's like, oh my God, that's a big bull. We need to get a little closer. And so it was my first hunt, and I'm shooting his 300 Win Mag, and he like sighted it in and whatnot. And he's like, I really want to get you within like 400 yards. So we're sneaking through this clear cut, and somehow we make it within 400 yards of this bull. And, he gets the rifle all set up. He's like, get on it. Can you see the bull? I'm like, Dad, I can't see him. He's like, okay, get on him. I was like, I still can't see him. He's like, okay, let's get a little closer. So we creep in probably 320 yards, and he's like, okay, get down on the gun. Can you see him? I'm like, Dad, I can't see him. Like, I don't know. I don't even remember looking through the scope. Like, I don't remember seeing anything through the scope. And I look back and I just like shake my head at this whole situation. But I just remember seeing the bull with my naked eye. And so when I got down on the rifle, I'm like, Dad, I can't see him. And this bull had no idea that we were there. And I don't know if his cows eventually ended up winding us or what, but he eventually just walked into the tree line. And so he's in the tree line, I guess. And my dad's like, Maddie, he's between those two trees. Like, get on him right now. Dad, I can't see him. And like, at this point, I don't ever remember seeing the elk's antlers or anything. So I don't really the pressure isn't on me because I don't recognize how big this bull is. And so I'm like, Dad, I can't see him. Well, the bull just like moseys on into the timber and disappears. And my dad's like freaking out. And he's like a pretty calm dude. But at this point, he's like, Maddie, you need to get on him. And I'm like, I can't see him. So anyways, he grabs the rifle and we start to make our way down towards the tree line. And we don't end up seeing him again. We walk the skid road in through the timber a ways, and we can't figure out which way he went. And I'm like, it's okay, Dad. We'll come back next year and get him. And the point that it really clicked for me, he was like, you will never see that bull again. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, I guess this is a big deal. And I remember him saying, I was just picturing in my mind, you were going to be on the Oregon regs holding this bull because he's like, this is the biggest Roosevelt I've ever seen. Big, dark antlers. He's like, this is the most beautiful animal I've ever seen. And I was just like, I couldn't see him. And so there's that experience. And
oh, man.
There was another opportunity I had to shoot a spike elk. And we were driving along early in the morning, and I was notorious for sleeping. I'd fall asleep while we were glassing. I'd sleep on the way in the truck.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. As a thank you, I got more discount codes for all of you. If you are in the market for anything in regards to calls, whether it's elk calls, turkey calls, deer or predator calls. You can save 15% on all Rocky Mountain hunting calls by using the code SOULSEEKERS. That's all one word. And if you're in the market for hard side hydration, a better way to hydrate, go check out hardsidehydration.com. Use the code SOULSEEKERS10 to save 10%. And we also have a discount at Graxaw.com. That is, Graxaw is the leader in ultralight game bags and other backcountry gear. Light, fast, and efficient is their motto. Use the code SOULSEEKERS, all one word, to save 10% at checkout.
But I remember we were on our way into our hunting spot, and I wake up and it's just getting light, and I look over to my right and there's a herd of elk, probably like 40 or so elk running through the trees beside us. And this road went up and it curved around to the right, and we knew that the elk were going to be crossing the road. And so we pull the truck up to the start of this corner. He's like, "Okay, hop out, get on your rifle, like get it ready." And so I remember I go in front of the truck, and the cows are crossing the road. He's like, "Okay, Maddie, here comes the spike. Here comes the spike." And it rains a lot in the coast of Oregon. And so I had scope covers on my scope of my rifle, and I had flipped the front one open, but I had shouldered my rifle, and then it was like awkward and I couldn't pop the front one off. And he's like, "Maddie, get on it. So naturally, like, I couldn't see the spike and it ran across the road. And then another one came. My dad had a tag too, and another spike came, and he ended up shooting that one up the hill a little bit. But that was just like another instance of me messing up the opportunity. And I feel like that's kind of how it started out for me. But it was just that constant challenge that kept driving me, because they weren't bad experiences. Like, we were seeing animals. They were just little things that, inexperienced me didn't know at the time what to do, or like I had to experience that situation for me to be like, okay, I need to make sure my scope covers are off, or, stuff like that. But still, like, really obviously memorable things in the woods with my dad. And then it was in high school when I drew a youth tag for black-tailed deer down in Southern Oregon, and it was mid-October. And so I was playing volleyball at the time. So I remember we left a Friday night after a volleyball game, and me, my dad, and my brother, and we went down there. We drove all night, stayed in a hotel, got up early the next morning, and we hiked into this unit. And we only had 3 days to hunt before I had to go back for volleyball practice. And my brother was playing football at the time too, so he had practice. And so we were pretty limited all through high school. That was kind of the case with hunting. We had to kind of just make it fit around sports where we could. But I remember the first day on this hunt, we saw quite a few deer, but just like no bucks. And I was just going to shoot, any buck I saw, and saw quite a few deer. They were all like far away or outside of the unit. And that afternoon, I had a doe down below me, and it was a hair tag, so I could shoot a doe or a buck. And she was at like 80 yards. And I was like, "Okay, Dad, I'm just going to shoot this doe." And he's like, "No, you're not. We still have tomorrow, just wait." And I was like, "No, I really just want to, get this one under my belt. I'm going to shoot this doe." He's like, "No, you're not. You're going to give it 10 more minutes." I'm like, 10 more minutes? Like, nothing's going to change in 10 minutes. I'm going to shoot this doe, and, that'll be it. He's like, "Maddie, you're not shooting that doe." And I kid you not, like 5 minutes later, another doe pops out, and pretty soon here comes a buck chasing these does. And it was a nice buck. Like, I have it mounted. And before my dad could stop him, he's like, "Okay, I'm going to stop him." And he's about to whistle, and I shoot. And I remember, so I shot as the buck was running, and the buck like kicks his foot up, and come to find out, I shot him right in the hoof, because we actually found the bullet lodged in his hoof. And so the buck runs down, and he was at like 100 yards at this point. And so the deer take off, they drop drop through this little drainage up the other side. And now they're at like 350 yards. But he finally stopped and I got a good shot on him. But it's kind of like a whirlwind of cracking off shots for a second, I felt like. And he was like, "Can't you just wait for me to stop him?" I was like, "I didn't know you were going to stop him." But it was really awesome that my dad and my brother were there. And my brother's been there for a lot of my animals, a lot of them. And he's always there to help pack them out. And he's just awesome. But that was my first buck.
Oh,
So that was cool.
I love it. Okay, so many questions I have for you. First off, do you actually remember how big that elk was? Like, do you remember like
don't.
having a visual of like, wow, that is huge, or no?
No, I remember. So Roosevelts are typically have really big bodies and smaller antlers than what you would see like compared to a Rocky Mountain elk. So I remember seeing his big body with my naked eye when we first spotted him, and I was like, okay, I think that's a bull. And my dad confirmed that. But just knowing how much my dad has hunted elk and just the successful hunter that he's been his entire life, and for him to say that was the biggest bull I've ever seen, I know that it was a huge bull.
It was a
no,
booner.
I don't remember seeing his antlers with my own eyes.
Gotcha. Okay, so the next question I have is, you have all these experiences with your father, and a lot of, I'll use the term disappointment. It might not have been disappointing, whatever. But with that being said, what was your biggest takeaways from how your father treated you, or how your father interacted with you after these types of scenarios? Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, he was always a very calm, like, not one to get super jacked up when hunting, but he was just, I think, always appreciative that we were out there doing those things with him. And so I don't think that it was ever really disappointing. It was like a learning opportunity. And he's like, okay, you can do this different next time. Or, he would throw jokes and stuff my way and be like, hey, remember that time you missed that giant bull? Or, but it was never like he was disappointed. It was always like, okay, this is what we're going to work on. And there's going to be a next time.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned, so I'm a parent of 3, which I said earlier, but learning about the importance of language, right? So, my little boys they act wild at times, and, instead of saying like you are a bad boy, like you're acting bad, because it's very different on then how they receive it, and then the self-talk in which they have. And why I'm bringing this up is because a lot of the times us as hunters will get down on ourselves, and then we start to beat down, and then we're not performing at our top level. And you're an athlete. The minute it's a head game is the minute that you're losing. Whether it's in sports and life or whatever. And so hearing you talk about how did your father react after scenarios, you obviously gathered a lot of knowledge and insight off of how he responded to then apply it moving forward. And to see this growth is really impressive. I'm so intrigued. It's like, tell me more.
Yeah, he's definitely been a great example for me, and he has impacted me so much and has really made me the hunter that I am today. He's always been a very ethical, by the book hunter, always abide by fair chase. And I look back on that big bull situation, and it would have been so easy for him to take my rifle, or, to get it perfectly on the bull and then just be like, okay, Maddie, like, here, pull the trigger. But the fact that he didn't do that says a lot about the hunter that he is and the ethical man that he is. And it really, like, that's what I had as an example growing up. And I really, really appreciate that from him.
Yeah. It goes a long ways in more than just the hunting aspect.
Yeah.
You don't have to hurry up. The people that are constantly in a hurry, like, slow down. I think he sets the perfect example of just what hunting is all about, right?
He definitely does.
Be still. Take it in.
Yeah.
and enjoy the journey. So that's amazing. So here you
Yeah.
are. Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's really funny. So I grew up rifle hunting with my dad, and he never bow hunted. But then in high school, we started toying with the idea of bow hunting. And like I said, super ethical hunter. And so he was not going to go hunt with a bow until he was very proficient with his bow and felt like he was going to be lethal in the field. Well, me, on the other hand, I'd been practicing all summer, and I was like, you know what? I'm ready to hunt. And so I ended up being the first one to kind of make the path for my family into bow hunting. And my very first season, archery elk hunting on the Coast Range, which is totally challenging, like with how thick the brush is. I had hunted the whole season, which is a month long in Oregon. And it was the very last day of the season. It was September 25th. And my dad and my brother were with me, and we were in the Coast Range. And like I said, my dad was used to walking through the woods very silently. And it's funny because I'm like, no, Dad, we're archery elk hunting. You know, you bugle, like they bugle back. This is what happens. You make noise, like you make them think that there's another elk there. And he was like, no, it's not what you do. And I was like, okay, well, I'm the one with the bow. You know, you're going to follow my lead. So, so we go down this road, and it's an old skid road, but you can't really tell it's there because it's off a landing, and the landing is surrounding the landing is really overgrown. And so you cut back through the blackberry bushes, and it comes out onto an old skid road that's just like soft green grass. And we call it the Green Mile now because it's Elk Haven back there. But lots of elk sign, but we hadn't heard anything, hadn't seen anything, hadn't been successful bugling. And so he's like, you know, why don't we just try to walk this and see if we can come up on anything. So I'm like, okay. So like a mile in, I'm like, we're walking and we're not seeing anything. And so we keep going. And then pretty soon, we're probably like 2 miles in at this point. Pretty soon, my dad's like, stop. And so we all stop. And he's like, do you hear that? And we can hear just like a tiny little twig break up on this ridge. And we're kind of on the point of this ridge. This old skid road curves around it, and the ridge comes down, and there's a pretty good elk trail up on it. And he's like, you hear that? And me and my brother are like, yeah. And he's like, okay. So we sneak along the bank, and we keep hearing more and more movement up above us. And so finally we get to the point where we keep sneaking along, and we see a cow elk up there. And we're like, okay, there's elk here. Like, we need to figure out if there's a bull. So we kind of hunker down against the bank, and we hear raking. And this tag is, you can kill a spike or anything bigger. And, but you can't shoot a cow in that unit. So I was looking for a bull. And so we hear raking up there on a tree. And I'm like, Dad, there's a bull in there. Well, it ends up being like a little spike. And, but totally fair game. And I was stoked. And so I was pretty comfortable out to 40. I had practiced out to 50, but 40, I was really comfortable. 50 on the deer target I'd been shooting, I was like, I was good, but not where I would have liked to be. And so it was kind of like a waiting game at this point, because we spotted this spike up there, and they had no idea we were there, but he was 83 yards. And so we just had to wait and pray that he worked his way down or fed his way down. And it felt like forever, but eventually he fed his way down, and my brother's still hunkered up against the bank, and my dad and I are behind this big fir tree, but I have a shooting lane. And he's like, Maddie, okay, he's coming closer. He's coming closer. And he's like, he's going to come to 50 yards. He's like, do you think you can make that shot? And in the moment, I'm like, yes, I can make that shot. So he's like, hey, get ready, knock an arrow. You're going to draw back. He's like, right as he steps out from behind, there's some alders up there. He's like, okay, right as he steps out from behind this alder, you got to shoot. And so I knock my arrow. I go to draw back, and my arrow comes unknocked and just clanks on my wrist. And at this point, my dad's like, freaking out. And I'd never seen him like this freaked out in all of my hunting with him. Like he was like, get it back on, get it back on. And I cannot believe the bull didn't hear us at this point. But I get it re-knocked and back on my rest, and I draw back again. He's like, okay, he's gonna step out at 53 yards. You got it? And I'm like, yep, I got it. He steps out, I draw back, shoot, double lung him, and he goes 20 yards and dies. And it was like that to this day is my favorite hunt. Like I've killed bigger bulls, I've killed big bucks. That is my favorite hunt to this day. Like just having my brother and my dad there and kind of being the first one to get them really excited about archery hunting. It was so awesome.
Dude, that's epic.
Yeah.
Epic. Congratulations. See, I knew you had some amazing stories tucked in there. That is phenomenal. Your first archery hunt ever, and you took an elk. That's big.
Yep.
That's big time, Maddie. Not many people I know have actually gone out and done that.
Yeah, I was stoked. And it was so funny because it got my dad really hooked on archery hunting. And he is a hardcore rifle hunter, and he had been successful like 10 years, or not 10 years, but like probably like 7 years in a row. And he just killed his first, he killed a really, really nice bull with his bow, but he just killed his first bull 2 years ago after 5 years of not killing one. I thought he was going to give up bow hunting and go back to rifle because he was getting so frustrated, but he finally did it, and I was super excited for him.
Wow. Okay, so going back to some takeaways. What are the takeaways you as a child, as an adolescent, all this, as a newer hunter, took from your father and was like, okay, this is what I want to apply to me hunting or me being how I am moving forward?
Definitely patience. He really taught me patience. He taught me the importance of having my own ethics, and really sticking to that regardless of what other people do. You know, I think it's easy to end up in a crowd where they might bend the rules a little bit or whatnot, but just really surrounding yourself with good people that have the same belief system as you and really sticking to your ethics. And I think that's what's made me the hunter that I am today. And just really the person that I am today, because he really instilled those values in me. And I think that you can learn so many things about yourself and about the person that you want to be and the values that you have in the woods and apply those to everyday life. And I think that's a lot of what kids these days miss out on is, you know, I learned a lot in school, but how much of it really applies to everyday life now. But what I learned in the woods, and especially when it got to the point where I could take those and apply those things to when I was hunting alone in the woods and really test myself and challenge myself, and what I learned deep down within myself applies to everyday life.
Yeah. See, that's beautiful. So you probably don't know much history on me and everything that I do. My whole mission is mentorship is conservation. You want hunting to last for generations to come. You got to invest in the hearts and lives of other people, because that's what keeps it going, you know? And so you saying, you know, the number one thing you took away, the first thing out of your mouth was patience. As newer hunters getting into the game who do not have the mentor person to look upon, that is one of the most hardest things to overcome, is understanding, okay, like I feel like I'm being pretty patient, but walk slower, be quieter, move, be still. And all those aspects apply to the patience game. Oh, I didn't see any animals. Okay, well, have patience. Next time, go out. Be consistent. Be positive. Keep working through it. And it's a lot easier said and done. It's a lot easier when you have somebody who's modeling it for you, rather than being like, okay, well, what's my measuring stick, right? What's my temperature gauge of like how am I on the patience scale or on all that?
Yes, and I think it really comes back to finding your why and finding your purpose in it. And I kind of look back and I don't know exactly what my purpose was hunting when I was younger. I think most of it was just, it was something that I enjoyed doing with my dad. And now that I'm older, I've really found my purpose in it. And so I don't expect to go out and be successful every time, but I can still be successful without taking an animal. Yes, the ultimate goal in hunting is to kill an animal, but there are so many opportunities to learn and to experience things in the wilderness that don't have to do with killing an animal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So finding those little takeaways within yourself. And I think that's kind of where being involved in athletics and fitness really came into play with that, is because I was getting a workout and it was like, okay, how many miles can I put in today? Or, just really testing myself in that manner. So regardless of whether I was successful in killing an animal or not, I felt like it was a successful day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I always grew up in a household where my father, who was a Hall of Fame football coach in the state of Washington, he was also my high school football coach and one of my teachers. But he would always say, either you're getting better or you're getting worse. Either you're getting better or you're getting worse. So that's like ingrained in my DNA of like when I'm hunting, like, okay, either I'm getting better or I'm getting worse. And that really, like, if you're focused on that moment the arrow pierces the skin or the bullet impacts or whatever, like if that's what you're hanging your hat on, then you're going to be sadly disappointed because you're going to feel like you're always getting worse rather than,
Yeah.
My mother, on the other hand, she would always say, inch by inch is a cinch. Mile by mile may take a while, but inch by
That's
inch
a
is a
good
cinch.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just like, these baby steps. So I remember in my hunting journey, which is very short, like I'm 38 and I took my hunter safety at 30 and it was in 2017. So what is that? 17, like 8 years ago, 7 years? No,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't make sense. What year? 23, like 7 years ago, I killed my
Yeah.
first big game animal, which was a black bear. And I remember, like, at that moment, I still didn't feel like I was a hunter. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I killed an animal, but, once is luck, two times is,
Yeah.
happenstance, and three times a trend. So I got to this point where, I go out, I come home, my wife's with the babies. Hey, did you see anything? Did you get anything? No. Well, did you see anything? No, I didn't even see anything. Okay, well, and I got so freaking fed up with that whole I'm not even seeing anything, to the point where I came home one day, I was like, babe, I saw something. I saw an animal hunting. Was it what you were after? No, but I saw an animal, and that means
Mm-hmm.
something's happening, to the point where now I saw the animal that I was actually after. Whether it was a legal animal or not, is like, oh, now all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I measure my hunting. It's not whether or not I'm killing something. I'm like, okay, am I getting on animals? Because if I'm not, then there is something I'm doing wrong at this point, I feel like.
Yes. Like maybe you're not in the right area, or yeah. It's so frustrating when you do go out and not see animals. I totally know how it goes. It's draining when you go day after day with not seeing animals.
Demoralizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just takes it out of you. And one of the things is, in a world of social media, and you being the brand marketing manager at Nosler, you see this, I'm sure, firsthand, and you live in the world of social media and like this presence of instant gratification, instant gram. They should call
Yeah.
it instant gram.
Yeah, they should.
Is this idea that we do things for other people rather than we do them for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then the authenticity, the genuine, heartfelt love disappears or gets clouded.
Yeah.
And like, what's your perspective on that? You live brand marketing. Like, you are constantly interacting and seeing people, and then you see them in a digital world, and it's like, okay, well, these people don't maybe line up, or maybe they do, or they represent hunting really well, or they don't, or what's your view on all this?
Yeah, social media can be a great tool if used correctly. I think it has done some amazing things for the hunting industry, and in part, I also think that it's ruined some things for it. There's the people that are out there that are really authentic, that have social media and are sharing educational things or sharing their experiences and have no thought of, hey, I'm just trying to show off in what they post. There's also those people that I feel like have started hunting because it's so popular on social media, because maybe they can make it big by posting the pictures of everything they kill or whatever it might be. And I think that it's gotten some people into it for the wrong reasons. Because really what I hunt is because it's a tradition that I've done since I was little. I love the meat. We harvest the meat from all of our animals. I killed a black bear this fall and turned all the meat into sausage. And so I love that aspect of it. And then just to get out there and like really care about the animals that you're hunting, and conservation is kind of an interesting topic these days. But theoretically, right, there's a quota for how many animals it are supposed to be on in a certain area that creates a healthy population. And I am working to meet that healthy population to help them, right?
Hmm.
Now, we have different fish and wildlife departments that maybe don't always have this in.
Speak freely if you want to. The state of
Okay.
Washington's garbage. I don't trust the election systems. I don't trust a lot of the politics. When you're mixing politics with management and conservation and uh, unelected officials making decisions, you know.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster, which is where we're going in Oregon too. But really behind it, there's supposed to be a reason why you're hunting those animals, and it's to keep healthy populations. Um, and I just love providing the meat. It's so rewarding to pull elk steaks out and be like, I provided this. I think that I honestly think that we could not buy meat at the grocery store for a long time and just live off what's in our freezer, which is a true blessing, because there's so many people that just go to the grocery store and grab some meat from the meat department, and they have no thought of where that meat is coming from. And so I think that hunting has really grounded me and brought me closer to my food sources and conservation. And there's just so many aspects of it that I love. And I think that social media in a lot of ways shows the end result of hunting, but not the whole process.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
I'm guilty of posting grip and grins. And
Oh, I love
I mean,
I
I
love grip
love.
and grins.
Me
I
too. I just am so proud of the animals that I've shot. And like I look in our living room and I have them hanging on the wall, and there's so many memories that surround that. And I just love gripping grins. Like I'm super proud of that. But I think that even myself too, I don't show as much of the process as I should. And there's so many people out there that are guilty of that as well. But a lot of it isn't as exciting as the kill and showing your success. And there's so much that goes into it: time, money, for some people years. There's people that go years without killing animals.
Yep.
And yeah, I think really that it's not maybe portrayed in the best light, but I think also too, like, it has gotten better in a lot of ways because there are more people getting involved in showing the food to table side of things, and I really respect that aspect of it.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, my take on social media is really interesting because I went in, so my why. Why did I want to start hunting?
Yeah,
I had a
I'm
call
curious.
upon my soul. I wanted more than what this life was giving me. There was,
Mhm.
um, I have a book that I wrote, but I haven't released it yet. And one of the opening lines is I always wanted to be a cowboy, but I never rode a horse or never ridden a horse.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I grew up in a house where sports was life. Sports was
Mhm.
king. Like, football, basketball, baseball, football, basketball, baseball. I was a 3-sport athlete, just everything. Well, I always wanted to hunt. I grew up with a Red Ryder BB gun in my backyard, shooting little green army men. And on days when it would rain, I felt like, oh, now I'm really gonna be tough, like old country westerns of grit, determination, and courage. Courage was like the biggest thing for me because I was scared to death to hunt bears. And I remember that very first hunt being like, man, I really hope no bears come into camp at night. And I was like, wait, no. Like I have
Were
a
you by yourself?
no, I wasn't even by myself. But like this is a fear, a childhood fear that I had that just
Mhm.
grew with me and I never faced it. And it wasn't until I became a hunter that I was like, I'm doing this for myself. So hunting is in my own personal life the very first thing I ever chose to do for myself. It was
Yeah.
never something that was taught to me, shared with me. Get like, I played sports because my dad did sports. I do this because
Mhm.
the lineage of family. Hunting was something I wanted. And I set off on this journey. And when I killed this first bear, and I've told this story before on the podcast before, but you've never heard it, so I'm going to share it with you real quick.
Yeah.
So I used to work at REI, and I I was a school teacher and a high school football coach, and high school football started August 16th in the state of Washington. And so the
Mhm.
first 2 weeks of August, I had always set off backpacking. I had backpacked the Pacific Crest Trail, the Wonderland Trail around Mount Rainier, just like I was gone. I'd bring a fishing pole with me. A lot of times I'd go to a lake and, cast in and
Yeah.
hang out, but I always wanted to hunt. I was like, fishing's awesome, but that visual, it's like shooting steel with a gun. You hear that
Mhm.
audible ring and you're like, oh, it feels so much better than just shooting paper.
Mhm.
Well, here I was out in the wilderness hiking and being like, I have no idea how to provide for myself if anything goes sideways rather than what I'm carrying. So I was working at REI and I was like, all right, I'm gonna start hunting. And so I realized that the only season that I could consistently hunt was black bear because it opened August 1st.
Mhm.
Weekend warrior status for deer, any of that was out the window because I was, breaking down film, scouting, doing all sorts of stuff. So I was like, I guess I'm a bear hunter. Never had the meat, never ate wild game before, nothing. Um, but I,
That's so courageous because we talk so much at Nosler about the barrier to entry into hunting, and especially as a man, I can't I can't probably understand that because 'cause I've been hunting my whole life, but I could see how that would be so intimidating.
oh, it totally was, totally was. Um, so I had a buddy, and I was like, "Hey, Tony, you want to take your hunter safety course?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, I guess so. Send it to me." So he was he's actually you met him, Two Shot Tony. He's
Oh,
now
yeah,
our
yeah.
yeah. So he was my original hunting partner I recruited to start hunting with me, and he took his
That's
hunter
so
safety,
cool.
and him and I just kind of went out and started to figure it out. 9 miles deep into the backcountry of the state of Washington, I'm on a bear hunt, and we see bears, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no way, man! We're doing it! We're doing it!" And I'm a big believer in manifestation and speaking things into existence and like just
Mhm.
owning it and law of attraction, all sorts of stuff. And so day one, um, the guy we try to get on some bears, but sun goes down and we realize like the terrain is just like way too hard to close that sort of distance. Learning everything.
Yeah.
Next day, all of a sudden, ruff, 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 ruff. I'm like, no way. I I'm 9 miles in here to get away from people because all I heard was, you got to get away from other hunters. You got to get
Uh-huh.
away from other people. Like, deeper you go, blah, blah, blah. And so it was 3 day hikers and a dog, female yoga instructor from Seattle, and 2 students with her. And so the story goes, and this is why I feel like I didn't really feel like a hunter when I killed this bear, is I was like, dude, she's just gonna ruin our entire hunting spot. Like, dogs barking, who knows what's happening. It was a heat wave, so we're all in the pond, getting cooled off, about to eat dinner and go out for the evening hunt, and I'm sitting there putting on my Birkenstocks because because I used to work at REI, and I have I have a little granola in me, but I'm not granola, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I get it.
And so the dog and her students are like 40 yards from us, and everyone's just hanging out, and all of a sudden she goes, bear. I'm like, no freaking way, because earlier when they walked up on us and were wearing camouflage and like, what are you doing? Oh, we're hunting. Oh, you can hunt here? Yeah, you can hunt here. This is because I didn't even understand what public lands was at the time. Like, I hiked, but no one teaches you what public land is and how to recreate on it or what you can do on it. It's not.
If you don't have to pay attention to the boundaries, then I feel like you just go up a trailhead and there you go.
Yeah. And so they're like, oh, what are you hunting? I was like, bear. You can hunt bear? Oh man, like, what do you do with it? Like, oh, we'll eat it. You can eat bear, like, just like an education in a very short amount of time. Well, sure enough, she yells, bear. I don't believe her at all. Tony grabs his gun. I'm like, whatever. I'm gonna grab my I grab my binoculars. I'm in shorts and Birkenstocks, and Tony runs up to her, and then he takes off, and I go up to her, and I'm like, did you actually see a bear? And her eyes are just huge, and I'm like, oh, she saw something.
Yeah.
I go, where was it? And she pointed, and it was only like 150 yards from us. And then I go, well, which way did it go? She goes, it went that way. And so I jogged slightly with my Birkenstocks on to catch up to Tony. He's standing there kind of just looking with his rifle. And I'm like, it's right there. It's right there. It pops out. And he's like, where is it? Where is it? I'm like, oh, it's right there. Shoot. And he goes, here, take my gun. And I grab his gun. And this is like a blur. And I run probably like 300 yards. I cross a creek, up a hill, all this stuff. And I stop and I pause. And I don't know what, like, this is just the way of the world, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. I stopped and I looked to my left and I just waited. And this bear popped out at 30 yards looking right at me. And it was right above this little creek bed. And so I stared it right in the eyes, and we like had this soul connection. And I was like, whoa, and the world slowed down. Like, everything was slow motion. I pulled up the gun, and it started to dip downhill, and I shot through its ear the way it was standing. So I took off some of its ear and put it in the lungs, and I actually recovered the bullet on the opposite side of the hide.
Oh, how cool.
And I heard the death moan. Like, that was my first example of hunting, and it was in front of this yoga instructor and her students. And they're like, is it safe? Is it dead? And I'm like, yeah, it's safe now. And so talk about this educational conservation, being a promoter of hunting. Not only was I learning, but I also had got to be an ambassador for hunting at that exact moment and be like, this is why we do this. This is what we're doing. And at that time, I didn't have an Instagram account. It wasn't until after that I founded what formerly was Washington Backcountry, was the Instagram account. And I was like, man, I don't know anyone that hunts. Well, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And so I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm going to build my own community. So create a social media account, just kind of started posting pictures, and I'm a DJ, and I do public speaking a lot. I was like, I'm going to throw my own event. And so I threw an event, uh, pubbed it out on Instagram, had probably like 200 followers at the time, and 11 people showed up from all over the state of Washington.
Wow.
And we had an event. I talked about the mission of mentorship as conservation. If you want hunting to last, now I'm a father of 3 children. You're not a
Hmm.
parent yet, are you?
No, not yet.
But you're going to be able to have that lineage. Not that we want our kids to be hunters, but they're going to at least be instilled with the knowledge and the know-how. And then when it comes to legislation and voting, they have a perspective or an opinion to lean one direction and to support conservation.
Yes.
So that's like my whole story. And so it led to creating a blog, which created a podcast, which this podcast used to be called the Soulful Hunter
Okay.
podcast. And then it turned into a YouTube channel. I took 3rd place in the 2021 Badlands Film Festival, which led into creating a show on Carbon TV. And all of this stemmed because the courage to be like, I'm going to do something for myself for the very first time.
That is such an inspiring story. That's so cool.
It's pretty fun. It's pretty
Yeah,
fun.
that's so awesome.
Yeah.
That
Thank you.
does take a ton of courage to do that.
Yeah.
Especially to go like at your age from not being a hunter at all and not growing up with that to just fully diving in.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was quite a journey, but I'll tell you what, I always say you can never outgive good. When you put good out into the world, this law of attraction, it naturally comes back to you. You're only gonna get rewarded with how much you give out. So those of you who are listening to this podcast, you're like, well, I don't feel like I'm getting that much reward. It's like, share, give. You're never gonna be outgived. Outgive. That's such horrible language right there. You can never. You can. What is the words? I'm losing it right now, Maddie.
I get what you're
The
saying.
boomerang effect, right? It's
Yeah.
like if you love something so much, set it free. And
Well, and
if it's meant to be, it'll come back to you.
yes, and I think that it's so fulfilling to serve others too, and I think that this day and age, it's really easy to compare yourself and get down on yourself with social media and whatnot, but as soon as you start to serve others and start to put others first and really, like, think about them, it just is so fulfilling and creates so much more happiness within yourself.
100%. So that's my journey of like hunting. So you met me at Dallas
Mhm.
Safari Club. I got offered a job at Dallas Safari Club this fall, but I had to turn it down because they wanted me to commute and I live too far away. But the different things is like I was at the Western Hunt Expo giving a black bear seminar.
Mhm.
I've only hunted a couple years. I've only killed a couple bears. But I'm giving a seminar because I at least know I have some knowledge and that knowledge is valuable enough to share.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the things is people are like, "Oh, I don't know enough. I don't have enough experience. I'm not good enough shot." And people let fear and doubt creep in, and then that controls them. It's like, no, you don't have to know it all. You just have to know one thing and how powerful and life transformative hunting is. And then
Mhm.
to allow you to give that away, because that's the beauty of it all.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that because it's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like, you don't get experience without going and experiencing it. So that's always, like, a funny thing to me
Yeah,
when people say that.
it's so fascinating. Anyway, so here we are, you and I talking, and it stems because of Jana Waller. Jana Waller was the 4th episode I ever released on the podcast, and I'm at 207. I just released my 207th episode today. And it's like her and how she is and how authentic and real she is. We hit it off right away,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden that community. And now I'm like, dude, here I am, a guy who doesn't know how to hunt. And now I'm networking with all these people. And really, the experience or the knowledge is at my fingertips if I want to call upon any of this. And it all started with me being vulnerable and putting myself
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
No
And
risk.
Jana kills a ton of bears. Like, she is a bear killing machine.
Yes.
But really, like, it is all at your fingertips if you really utilize social media in the appropriate way. And like YouTube, there's so much knowledge out there that's just a click away.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. So what is it like working at Nosler? Let's shift gears. We talked about the social media. We're talking about this journey, how we look at life. What is it like working at Nosler, one? And number two, being a female in a male-dominated industry?
Yeah, so working at Nosler is awesome. Obviously, it's right up my alley, aligns really well with my passion. Nosler, this is 2023 is their 75th anniversary. So they've been in the game for a very long time, and they're run by the third generation Nosler. So John Nosler, he runs our company. He's in the office every day. Very tight knit community within our organization. And I really love that. There are other women that work there, but not other women that really pursue hunting or the outdoors in the way that I do, at least not in our offices. And it's really neat because I think I provide a different perspective from some of the men in the organization. And I'm to the point where I really do have a voice, and I sit in on a lot of management meetings and R&D meetings, and am the only female in the room, yet I feel appreciated and valued and able to speak my voice and from my perspective. And that's probably what I love most about Nosler. And then I've gotten to go on some really awesome trips too, which is just like a cherry on top. But being in a woman in the industry as a whole, like I told you when we were at the Hunt Expo, I typically see it from the older generation, which I think it's just how they are in a lot of ways. And, the things were just different when they were growing up. But guys do wait in, they actually like form a line and wait in line when there's not a guy available to talk to them. So usually it's me and my coworker Caleb that go to shows, and Caleb's great. Like, he didn't grow up a hunter either, but he's getting into it. And he owns a couple guns, and he is absolutely great at his job. He's a rifle salesman, and he can talk the talk for sure. But guys overlook me because I'm a woman. And it isn't until they actually start having a conversation with me that they really do realize what I'm talking about, and that I can talk ballistics, and I can talk hunting, and I can talk shooting, and I really do know what I'm talking about. And so it's funny to watch, and I don't get offended by it. They just don't really know any different, I would say. But it's usually the older guys that come up and are like, "Oh, are you just eye candy for the booth?" Or like, I'm like, "No, if you actually engaged in a conversation with me, you'd realize that I have a lot of knowledge to offer."
Yeah, it's do you get frustrated?
I didn't used to in the beginning, because I was like, I talked to enough people that shows that one less person that doesn't want to talk to me is not a big deal. But being overlooked because I am a woman, it does get frustrating, because I do love the industry, and I do love hunting and shooting and guns. And so when that's your passion and people are overlooking you because you're a woman, it does kind of get you down in the dumps after, 4 days of that happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine how you just want your shot, right? Just like
Yeah.
just give me an opportunity. That's all I want. At the end of the day, human beings just want to be acknowledged, and they just want to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it is a female in the hunting industry, or redheaded stepchild, or whatever it is, like scenario you want to paint, everyone just wants to be loved and acknowledged, and they want to be treated like a human being. And so often we get tunnel vision. And this applies for hunting as well. I think hunting is like one of the most amazing life parallels. Grown up sports, they're like, oh, we teach life lessons in sports, life lessons. And it's like, yes, we do. But nothing sticks with you as long as like that hunting experience does. And I don't know what it is. I think at the end of the day, this world needs a rude awakening or a loving awakening to reset ourselves onto what life really is all about.
Yeah.
Right? If we could do away with the fiat system, currency system, and go with a love currency, like you just do things based off of love, right?
Yeah.
Right? Love, treating others the way you want to be treated, and you treat them the way that you want to treat them because you just want good in this world. And that a lot of people can't handle that because they live in doubt and they live in fear and they don't know what true love is, what it means to just be yourself and let your guard down and just float like on your back in water. Like this is what it's meant to be. But instead we're constantly like edgy and calculated and like let's just be ourselves. So when I talk about at the beginning, like my really awkward introduction to you, that was just me being me, and I'm sorry that it came off so weird, and now I'll always have that memory as like, oh yeah, Maddie and I, and me asking about Jolene being in the booth making a funny about Jana's gun, ha ha ha, and you being like, who are you?
I was like, wait, what are you talking about?
No, but that's the whole purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Mentorship is conservation, and hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure. And if you just allow people to experience it, you never know what's going to happen. You never know where they're going to take it, right? Who's going to be the next Jim Shockey, Randy Newberg, the next Madi Woodward or Johnny Mack, or, like at the end of the day, we're just people and we're doing what we love, and yet people love to cast judgment so quickly.
Yeah, and I think that even within the hunting industry itself, there's different trends and there's cliques and there's like the cool kids and there's so many different generations within the hunting industry and different groups that we're really all out there after one main goal. And I think we need to really look at that a little better, even when you get to different conservation groups like RMEF and MDF and the Wild Sheep Foundation. What they're doing is great, but we need to work towards one common goal. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that.
Yeah. Ego gets in the way very quickly.
Oh, yes. Especially in this industry, it seems.
Yes. The ego. Man, drop the ego and be humble. You know what I'm saying? Maddie, if you could share what you want to see for the hunting world, what would it be? You kind of mentioned it a little bit, but like...
Yeah, I really just want it to get back to the roots of tradition. I think that that's what's impacted me so much, and ethics, because there's always advancing technologies and different things, and I think really just doing what's best for the animals and caring about the wildlife that you're chasing and just getting back to the why.
Yeah. Always remembering the why. Why am I doing this? There's a time that I've gone through a lot of transformation in my hunting journey, from not knowing how to all of a sudden having a show and a podcast, and all of a sudden somehow that gives me credibility, even though I'm just a dude doing what I love. The interesting thing is that there's this progression, and we talked about progression earlier. Is like, in a hunter's life, like if it's brown, it's down, right? And if it flies, it dies too. Okay, now I'm going to hold off until I get a higher quality representation of that animal.
Yeah.
Or then it's like, okay, now I don't even really want to squeeze the trigger. I want to watch you enjoy that. And if everybody could have the opportunity or provide themselves with the opportunity to be with somebody and watch them in the moment of their very first, it would really change some hearts in this world. I truly believe.
Oh, yeah, I felt a real call, like, just probably within the last 6 months or so, to really share my knowledge and spread my knowledge, especially to women. And like I said, my mom is someone that's never killed an animal, and I don't know if she'll ever kill an animal. But last year we got her a cow elk tag and took her out, and we saw tons of cows, and we ended up getting her on one, and she couldn't pull the trigger. And like, you know what? That's okay. It's not for everyone. Like,
Mhm.
she loves elk meat. She's excited for us when we get one, but you don't have to be a hunter yourself to recognize the benefits of hunting and to support hunters. And I feel like I'm doing the industry a disservice by not sharing those experiences with other women. And so the last few months, I've been putting together a plan to offer some, I don't know if I want to call them retreats, but like 3 or 4 day sessions to bring in a couple women, per trip, and teach them how to use a rifle and get comfortable with a rifle, and let them shoot a cow elk and teach them how to break it down, and then send them home with all of this fresh meat. And so I'm working on putting together a couple trips. I'm hoping I can squeeze it into this year. Um, at least, get 1 or 2 under my belt, and then, learn from it and expand. But yeah, I really just want to share that with other people.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I got two people I want to connect you with that we'll talk about after this show. Two females that would be really powerful for you to connect with. Um, Man, Maddie, that is a beautiful story. That's
Yeah.
I love that. So, what does the future hold for you? Like, what is it like envisioning out in the future of like when you have kids? What is that going to be like? Does hunting get put on the back burner and you being a mom? Is it something that you and your husband are be like, all right, kiddos, you're in the kiddo backpack and we're going to go shed hunting or we're going to go scouting or like, how does it, what do you envision for the future?
I don't think hunting will ever get put on the back burner. I might not be able to go on as many like long trips or out of state hunts or whatnot, but I definitely want to raise my children in that environment. And it's funny because so my brother has 2 kids and a third on the way. And I actually, when I killed my bear last fall, my nephew, who was 3 at the time, he was with me. And it was just really cool that they trusted him to come hunting with me.
Yeah.
But just also really cool that he was there. And we have pictures, and these are moments that he can look back on when he's older. And he goes shed hunting with us, and we got him a little bow and arrow for Christmas, and it's just really neat. And I definitely want to experience that with my children too. So I don't think that'll ever get put on the back burner. And by no means do they have to be a hunter, but like you said, I want to expose them to that. And it teaches you really how to get yourself out of bad situations if you need to. It teaches you so many life lessons to be aware of your surroundings. Um, and there's just so much to learn that whether they choose to do that as an adult or not, I think that it's a good foundation to have.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's good to know how to swim, whether you continue swimming or not. It's good to know how to ride a
Yes,
bicycle, whether you ever ride a bicycle ever again. Like
totally.
total, total life skills that are super important. What would you say hunting has done for you?
Oh gosh, it's really it's really just made me the person that I am today. Um, yeah, I have no idea where I'd be without it.
Yeah.
Not only has it gotten me to where I'm at in my career, but just the values that I have, I can apply everything that I've learned from hunting to everyday life. So I honestly, it just really has made me who I am.
Yeah. What I love about doing podcasts like this is you are obviously a very high quality human being. And getting asked questions like this all of a sudden makes us pause and be like, hmm,
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, if we want hunting to last for generations, we have to be able to speak to it. And if
Yeah.
we don't understand what hunting has done to us, then how are we ever going to tell a story about how amazing it is and why other people can have a great time as well? And
Yeah, that's such a good point.
and so for us to then we have to be able to be advocates for hunting and know how to speak to it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
are you a person of faith, a Bible believer at all?
Yeah, I didn't grow up going to church that often aside from like Christmas and Easter, but yes.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't even go to church anymore. I'll tell you this though, the power of life and death is on the tongue. And we it says in the Bible, we eat the fruit thereof, right? So
Yeah.
either you're speaking life or you are speaking death. And
Mm-hmm.
how we speak about hunting, how we speak about our jobs, our spouse, our children, our future, we need to choose our words wisely, and
Yes.
we need to speak positively about it. I forget what scientific study it was, where someone did a study speaking to plants. Have you ever heard of this?
Uh-uh.
So, um, they did a couple different studies. I'm gonna have to look this up. I don't have the name of it, but they had a flower, a little
Okay.
pot of flowers, um, and one pot they talked to the plant like, "Oh, you're so beautiful. Thank you for like the smells and the beauty and all this." And the other plant that they would say, "You're worthless, you're ugly, you're stuff like that." And the plant actually reacted. The one that got spoken to positively blossomed even more, and the one that was talked to negatively and ignored shriveled and shrunk.
Isn't that amazing?
They've done this with fruit trees as well, and fruit trees produce more fruit when they are loved. And it is amazing, and it just kind of goes to show that people need to, if you love something, speak about it and speak positively
Mm-hmm.
about it, right? Some of the most amazing stories that I would say a lot of people have from their childhood youth is when they're sitting either at their feet of their grandparents or their feet
Yeah.
of their parents or around a campfire listening to
There's
stories.
so much power in listening to. I think a lot of times, like these days, people just talk too much. But if you really take the time to listen, there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah. Well, God gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason, so we can listen
That is
twice
a
as
very
much as
good
we
point.
speak.
Yes.
I love it. Maddie, you are an amazing, amazing soul. I am honored that you chose to be a guest on this podcast. Thank you for coming and joining us. Um, I can't wait to be in community with you more and to build this, you know, in life. It's not what you know, it's who you know,
You know,
right?
totally.
And
Yeah. And this community has brought so many great people into my life. And I'm so, so thankful for that. And I'm grateful that you brought me onto this podcast because it's just another connection and it's another way to get my voice out there and share my hunting experience. And yeah, it's been super fun.
I love it. I know that we have some female listeners on this podcast. So if you're looking at actually putting together something for some sort of retreat for
Yeah.
learning and all that, how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to follow you or whatever?
The best way to probably contact me is through Instagram, and it's Madi Woodward. When I changed my last name, there was already a girl with the Madi Woodward handle, so I had to add some extra I's in there. I almost wanted to be like, "Hey, I'll give you $100 to like change your name." But
Right.
yeah, Maddie with 3 I's, 1 D, Woodward.
Awesome. I'll make sure I have that link in the show notes as well so people can click on it and go follow you and get connected. So I really appreciate it. What's the future hold? We're emerging into springtime here. Or do you got turkey hunts planned, spring bear hunts? What do you got in the works?
I'll probably hunt some turkey. I did draw my Oregon spring bear tag, so that's
Sweet.
exciting. And then yeah, I drew some good tags for this fall for Idaho. I have an Idaho deer and elk tag, and then I'll archery hunt deer and elk here in Oregon. And then sounds like we're going to Texas for whitetail again. So got a busy fall. So
well, when you guys come down to Texas, maybe I can hook up with you and I'll come sit in the blind and video or take pictures for you or whatever.
yeah, that'd be fun.
Share some stories. Maddie, you are amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, the number one thing that you can do is to share it with others. Just like what we talked about on this podcast is if you love something, like it, give it away. Go share the good news, the good word, and get out there. Remember that life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. You're not a victim of your circumstances, and that you get to create your own existence. Be blessed, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. I'm Johnny Mack. Remember that mentorship is conservation and hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure. If you want to get more connected with the podcast, check out the Soul Seekers Nation Facebook group, as I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So stay tuned and stay soulful.